Hey everybody, there's going to be some sensitive content in this week's episode. So this is your trigger warning. If you need that and you will have a problem with talking about the sensitive content, in particular, the incident that happened with the metal band Decapitated, please be aware that that content is in this podcast. Thank you so much. And here is the episode. Welcome, metalheads, to Heavy Metal Philosophy. I'm your host, the sommelier of extreme metal and blue-collar philosopher, John Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's Riff of the Week. Now, this week, there's going to be people who have very strong opinions about cancel culture on both the left and the right wing that are going to be very angry at what I have to say because I'm coming after both of y'all. This week, 3 examples of cancel culture occurred in the metal community. And it's 3 examples that I think really illuminate all the various different aspects of cancel culture. Because I believe that cancel culture can be positive, and I also believe that it goes too far sometimes. Now, you cannot talk about cancel culture on the internet without being lumped in with a few people that I don't want to be lumped in with. There's people on the internet who it is their theme, it is their prime directive to decry the excesses of cancel culture, and I don't want to be grouped in with those voices on the internet. There's sometimes I agree with those people, but most of the time I don't. This isn't that kind of channel. If you're a day one subscriber, you remember on the first episode of Heavy Metal Philosophy, when I introduced what the mission plan was for this podcast and what I want to do, I said I was going to do my best to leave politics out of this. It's not because I'm scared. It's not because I want to appeal to the masses. I also said in that episode that I will speak out about things that I believe in if it's necessary. The reason why I've wanted to leave politics out of this podcast is because my previous podcast that I did was a political podcast, and it just wasn't good for my mental health. It's just not something that I want to be doing week in and week out. I'd rather be doing what I love, which is celebrating new metal, old metal, just fantastic metal, and philosophy, and more importantly, the philosophies inside of metal, which is what we're going to talk about this week. I think there were some significant misunderstandings this week. So let's jump right into it. There was 2 album announcements this week. First, Decapitated announced their new album, and it's called Cancer Culture, which is a very unfortunate album title. It's too on the nose, it's pretty cheesy, and we all know the incident that caused you to go, this cancel culture is bullshit. So, not the best look, y'all. And then the other album that got announced was Behemoth's new album. The thing that caused the controversy in the metal community was there was this article from, I believe it was Metal Sucks, which should tell you everything you need to know. And the headline said that Behemoth announces a new album about cancel culture. Well, I read the article, and I think that the person who wrote the headline took a little bit of liberties because he knew, or she, I don't know who, he or she knew that if you say the album is about cancel culture, it would cause outrage in the community and it would drive clicks. Because there's a big misunderstanding about the term cancel culture. If in American culture, if you say the words cancel culture, you immediately get lumped in with the Ben Shapiro types, the Jordan Petersons, the people who's, they think that it's just liberals run amok and cancel culture and everybody has to be afraid about what they say. So if you do have an issue with cancel culture and you say something about it, then Twitter goes, these guys, and they lump them in with those guys. But in my opinion, the 3 examples that I alluded to provide very different views on cancel culture. One seems pretty appropriate to me. The other one seems not so much. And then the third one is just, what the fuck is going on here? What is this craziness? So let's just not beat around the bush. The point is, the controversy around Decapitated was because a few years back, they were accused of sexual assault. They were accused of gang raping a chick on their tour bus. So quite understandably, a lot of people were outraged by that and have strong feelings about the band because of that. Now, the band was not prosecuted for this crime. The charges were dropped, but the prosecutor said that they were dropped for the well-being of the victim. So they weren't acquitted. They weren't proven innocent, just as much as they weren't proven guilty. So do I know if they did it or not? No, I don't know. But individual metal fans have the right to believe they did it or believe they didn't do it. And the ones that believe that they did it are perfectly reasonable in saying, I don't want to support this band anymore. You know, pick any one of my favorite bands. If they gang rape a chick, I feel like I would be perfectly justified going, yikes, that's not cool, and I'm not going to buy any more of your records, and I'm not going to attend any of your concerts, because I don't want to support people that would do such a thing. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. And if they didn't do it and they're angry at the backlash, that also seems reasonable to me. But I don't think that people are out of bounds either. Okay, now you take the other example with Behemoth. I think that there's a big misunderstanding because you have to understand politics are different in Europe than they are in America. And I think a lot of people view things through an American lens when they look at things. So this article comes out and says Behemoth is writing an album about cancel culture, and people are all like, oh my God, these fucking guys, they're doing that thing. Boomer musicians decrying cancel culture. But you have to understand, it's not the same. And this is why it's not the same. There's a difference between being accused of sexual assault versus what Behemoth has gone through, because as a Polish band and with Polish politics, you have to understand Poland is all but a theocracy. Now, technically, they aren't on paper the way that their government is written. It's not technically a theocracy. It is a democracy where they have voting, but the majority party is heavily right-wing Catholic. And so in practice, the ruling party and the laws that are on the books now, it's a theocracy. And Behemoth, particularly Nergal, the lead singer, has been taken to court multiple times for the crime of offending Christians. So you see, on the one hand, you have a band who's been accused of a heinous act, and the fans, the individual fans, saying, I believe the victim and I don't want to support this band anymore. Now you might say, well, that's not right, that's not fair, because innocent until proven guilty. Okay, that's the societal norm that we should strive for, but individuals are allowed to go, I believe the victim, just as much as individuals are allowed to say, I believe the band, I believe it was a false accusation. And each individual is allowed to say, I'm going to support the band from here on out, or I'm not going to support the band from here on out. Whereas Behemoth, it's not some random person, some individual's opinion on Twitter giving them a hard time. It's the actual government trying to punish them legally, taking them to court, and Nurgle has to pay a lawyer an exorbitant lawyer's fees to defend himself from the state. Far greater consequences than some metalheads on Twitter are angry at you. So if Nurgle decries cancel culture, which again, I think that it was a clickbait title, and I'll get to that in a minute. But for the sake of argument, let's say he actually is writing a concept album that's all about cancel culture, which I very much doubt. But just for the sake of argument, let's say that's what he's doing. I understand. Because none of us, I hope, listening to this, if you're hearing the sound of my voice and you're an American, none of us have been taken to court because we offended some Christians. And the government coming after you to punish you legally. Yeah, let's decry that. Let's speak out about that. You know, if Nurgle does something heinous, where there's actual victims, and by victims, I mean something more than you got your fucking feelings hurt, then okay. But if barring that, yeah, we should speak out about that, quote, cancel culture. Yeah, that is a injustice that should be addressed and should be denounced by everyone. See, the problem is the term cancel culture is a recent term, like 2014-ish sort of term, because of social media and social media mobs. But I'm old enough to remember that cancel culture has been around for a long time before the phrase cancel culture actually got coined. Because it wasn't a phenomenon that people observed and decried until social media. But I remember back in the day that, quote, cancel culture was a weapon that evangelical Christians used back in the day before the internet. Back in the day, if you would watch a television show or listen to a song on the radio and it had any risque content in it whatsoever, the evangelical Christians would call the advertisers and bitch and moan, are you really going to support this TV show or this artist that is poisoning the minds of our youth? And they would try to get those people effectively canceled. So cancel culture began with the evangelical right. It's, right now, as we know it, young people consider cancel culture a left-wing thing. But it started with the right. And any political weapon that's effective, no matter which side starts with it, whoever dreams up, if we do this, it'll be effective, and they start using it, the other side will notice that that weapon is effective and they'll start using it. So that's what's happened. Other people and other political affiliations saw that that was effective. If you call the advertisers of TV shows, or if you call the radio station that's playing the songs, or whatever organization is platforming the medium, if you call them and complain and say that you're not going to give them their money anymore, it has an effect politically. So now, because that is an effective weapon, everybody's going to use it and they're going to escalate its use. The right likes to say that cancel culture is this left-wing thing, which is some very short-term memory bullshit. Not to mention they do it all the time. They just don't complain about it when they do it. If they want to boycott Disney, well, that's justified, right? And maybe it is justified, but be honest about it. You don't hate cancel culture. You just hate it when it's done to people you like. And that's why the left wing says there's no such thing as cancel culture. It's just consequences. But if it happens to somebody they like, then they decry the right wing hypocrisy. So that leads me to the third example that I alluded to in the beginning. As I said in the beginning, there was 3 examples of cancel culture in the metal community that I noticed this week. The first being the Decapitated album announcement, and the second being the Behemoth album announcement. The third one was much smaller scale. It only really happened in the small community that I'm involved in. But there's this guy that I follow on Twitter, and he follows me. Thank you for the follow. And much in the same way that your Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson types, one of their first and foremost issues that they concern themselves with being cancel culture and free speech. This guy, he's a very prolific on Twitter for pointing out suspect behavior that various metal bands have. Now, a lot of the times it seems awfully petty to me, the examples that he's using to show that this band is suspect. But every now and again, he really shows something like, damn, that's fucked up. And so because he does do that, I find his Twitter account to be very valuable. Because if you're subscribed to me on YouTube, then you know that every weekend, exclusively on YouTube, I break down my top 5 new metal albums that are released that weekend. And I have to listen to dozens of metal albums over the weekend to hear them all. And I don't have time to research the biography of every member of every band to find out if they have some sort of association with somebody else somewhere who might be a Nazi. I'm sorry, I don't have time to do that. So having this guy pointing it out is a valuable service to me. And like I said, a lot of the times it's this 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of association game that I feel is a little bit petty. I'll get to that in a minute. But this week he pointed something out and there was no debate about it. There was no gray area. It wasn't Nazi adjacent. He wasn't friends with a Nazi. He didn't say something that was conservative, like, he believes in gun rights or something, and then everybody's calling him a Nazi just because they're more right-wing than they are. He posted these guys sharing albums with not just like Nazi symbols, like an eagle or an SS, an actual fucking swastika on it. He's like, look at this great album. And it's got a fucking swastika on it and the Nazi SS. And I was like, wow, that guy's just like no bones about it, not trying to hide it, not being clever about it, full on Nazi shit. So I don't have any problem with anybody listening to music that has a political message that's further right than I feel comfortable with. Because I'm sure I have views that are further right than somebody else has comfort with. I have a very, very simple thing. I'm very tolerant of right-wing and left-wing things. I just have a very simple and easy to decipher line of demarcation, and that's full-on fucking Nazis. That whole punch a Nazi thing, and people are like, well, you can't do that because who gets to decide who's a Nazi or not, right? Like, I understand that argument because people that maybe think you should have lower taxes, it doesn't mean that they're a Nazi. But when your album has a fucking swastika on it, you're a fucking Nazi. There's no debate about it. We don't have to research it. We don't have to seek out evidence. We don't have to ask you for a statement to decry racism. You put a fucking swastika on your album cover. You a fucking Nazi, bro. So he pointed that guy out, and that was a valuable service to me because now I know, like, this guy is cool with Nazis. And again, not that sort of reactionary left-wing thing where, somebody who's, more right than Hillary Clinton is a Nazi. I don't know. Like, unequivocally, no debate about it, clear as day, guy's a fucking Nazi. It's easy. Whereas somebody else who's just like, I want lower taxes and I think that we should have some rules about immigration, that doesn't make them a Nazi. But having a swastika on your album cover, I don't need any more evidence than that. Yeah, that was a super valuable service. I know not to follow that guy. But here's the funny thing. And this is why this example of cancel culture is so insane to me. I looked at my mutuals that follow this guy who posted the album with the swastika on it. And it was a lot of my mutuals on Twitter. Now, I'm not going to unfollow people because they follow somebody. And I'll get to why in a minute. But it is insane to me because I was looking at the names. And I remember last year I reviewed the new Hooded Menace album. And when that album dropped, there was a very small but very vocal minority of people in the metal community that were going after Hooded Menace because one of their band members used to be in another band where another member of that band used to be in a different band who might have used an artist that drew some Nazi shit. Dude, come the fuck on. I can't, that's too much. I can't play this 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game. If that's the way we're going to do it, then nobody ever will ever pass a purity test. So I talked about earlier that the reason why I think it's okay for Behemoth to complain about cancel culture is because they're being attacked by the government, which is a big deal. But, you know, I'm a big Behemoth fan and I didn't want to be biased. So I did some research before recording this podcast. I was like, okay, well, let me see if there's anything else that other people are mad about with Nurgle besides just he might have uttered the words cancel culture, which conjures images of, you know, QAnon folks or whatever. So I did the research. And has Nurgle done some questionable things? Sure, of course. As has almost every rock star who's been in the limelight for more than a decade. You know, in particular, the whole lying about being kicked out of the YMCA thing by Christians, that's pretty egregious to me. I think that's very not cool, very unfair of him, and very disingenuous. But one of the other things that people got mad at Nurgle about was he took a picture with somebody backstage at a festival who has ties with some band that is suspected of being racist. I mean, what are we doing here? So by that logic, recently, like today, at the time of this recording, Nurgle posted a picture backstage with Lars. So is now Lars guilty of association with that other guy who might be in a racist band? Like, you can't take pictures with people that are on the same festival? How about me? So before the pandemic, my band played this event called Bikes on Broadway every year, and it was a charity event, a big rock and roll festival that all the proceeds would go to a local children's home. And the concert was organized by a biker gang, or let's say a biker group called the Miracle Riders. And the reason why I clarify that it's a group and not a gang is because in the charter, the whole reason for being in the Miracle Riders is for charity for children. All of their proceeds go to, you know, the Shriners and children's hospitals and foster homes. But security, because it is a biker event, was done by the Iron Cross. Okay, I don't have any doubt in my mind that there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 members of the Iron Cross that might be racist. So am I supposed to not play this charity event put on by the Miracle Riders and lend my talents to raise money for a foster home because 1 or 2 of the members of the biker gang that is helping to do the work that is required to put on a big festival might be questionable? Does that implicate me? Am I a fucking Nazi because some member of this other group that's not my group might have questionable beliefs? Am I supposed to audit each and every one of the members of the Iron Cross because their names sound suspect? That's unreasonable. Tell you what else is unreasonable. In my research to see, like, okay, is Behemoth problematic? I came across an article that promised to list all the offenses that Behemoth has done that is a reason why I should believe that they're fucking Nazis. And when I read the article, first of all, it just reeked of me of an American viewing everything that was done with an American lens. Because I'm sure Nurgle is not fully pure. Is not going to pass the purity test. I don't know about Orion and Seth and Inferno because they don't do interviews very often. I don't know what their views are, but I know that they're not right wing. So in America, all you have to do is really say something that the left doesn't like, and that makes you right wing. Because there's only two sides here, and there's a culture war going on that is polluting all of the political rhetoric. So you can't take any stand that's not on the team without being labeled as, well, you must be on the other team now. So never mind that Nurgle has lobbied against the anti-abortion laws in Poland. Never mind that the entirety of Behemoth's message is to fight against the theocracy that they live under. They must be right wing. And the thing that drove me the most crazy about this article is it said that being, quote, pro-Palestine is a dog whistle to Nazis. That's fucking insane. So, you know, I'm not an expert on the conflict in the Middle East. I don't know the intricacies of that conflict, but what I do know is this week a video came out. It showed the IDF in full SWAT tactical gear hitting funeral procession people who were carrying the casket of a Palestinian, trying to carry the casket to the funeral, hitting them with nightsticks. And these poor people are trying to not get fucked up by the police that are beating them with nightsticks, but also not drop the casket because, yo, that's fucked up. So when I see something like that, I feel empathy for those people. Does that mean I'm a Nazi? Does that mean I hate Jews? That's fucking crazy. You know, I also feel empathy if somebody says, you know, I'm an innocent person. I didn't vote for these candidates in Israel and rockets fell in my neighborhood. I feel empathy for them too. Like, it must be a nightmare scenario living over there. But Jesus Christ, when you're trying to have a funeral and you're being beaten by the police, I have a lot of empathy for those people. So if I was to decry the behavior of those police forces and say something positive about the Palestinian people, do I have to be worried about being labeled as a fucking Nazi? Jesus Christ. So I'm out of hand dismissing anything that person says in that article. All of your opinions are null and void after that one. You can get the fuck out of here with that shit. So those are examples on both sides of how insane that whole Nazi thing is in the whole cancel culture thing. On the one hand, you've got people that are like, what, bro? It's just a difference of opinion. No, it's not. And also, how good are the riffs? The riffs can't be that good. Either you're cool with Nazis or you're saying that, yeah, I'm not really cool with the Nazi thing, but the riffs are good. No, they're not that good. If the riffs were that good, they would be, you know, Cannibal Corpse or Metallica or something. They would be huge, but they're not. Nobody's heard of them. The riffs aren't that good. You're lying. You like Nazi shit. And people that are like anti-cancel culture will say, you know, it's just a different political opinion. No, it's not. It's not a different political opinion. Wanting a different tax rate is a different political opinion. Wanting less regulations on guns is a different political opinion. But let me tell you something. I'm a minority in this country. And I'm not even one of the ones that has it the worst. I'm not black. I'm not Jewish. I'm not a woman. I'm not trans. As somebody who mostly passes as white, I can tell you, for the most part, my life has been great in America. And I'm very thankful that I was born here, and I'm very thankful for what I have. But even as privileged as I am, I have been made to feel unwelcome here because I'm not fully white. And if those people, those white nationalist people, get their way, guess who's not allowed to be here? Me. Even though it was no choice of mine to be a minority, I was born in America. My dad was born in America. My mom was born somewhere else, but she was adopted by an American family and raised by Americans, and she has a deeper Southern accent than I do. She can't even speak her native language. It's only her blood that's foreign. But I'm not white enough, even though there is no way. I'm as American as it can get. I was born here. Most of my parents were born here. All of my family's from here, going back to colonial times. And even that's not good enough to a white supremacist. So no, it's not a political opinion. You fucking hate me for just existing. I can't get behind that. There's no way the riffs are good enough for me to ignore that fact and listen to that band with the fucking swastika on the album cover. You get the fuck out of here with that shit. There's only white people could possibly say, oh yeah, man, I don't really care for the message. It just sounds good. Because they're not trying to kick you out of the country. They're not trying to kick you out, hang you, shoot you, or at best, at the most pedestrian, just say awful shit to make you feel unwelcome for physical characteristics that are completely outside of your control. They're not trying to say that you're inferior. They're saying that about other people. So you can listen to the music and not feel threatened by it. I can't do that. So I have one last point that I want to make about cancel culture. And this is the thing that I really don't hear a lot of people saying or considering. It's hard to put in technical terms as a philosopher. Let me just say that I have this opinion that I think that there's really two categories of careers. I think that there's what probably me and you have. Maybe somebody listening to this is a rock star, but most likely you have a day job just like I do. And that's the day job, normal career, normal job. That's your career. And the other one is in this category that I call the awesome jobs that everybody wants. That's rock star, movie star, pro athlete, artist, those sort of jobs. And I think that depending on which one of those categories you sit in, depends on if cancel culture is a big deal or not. So for me personally, I find it vile and reprehensible if somebody was to tweet something that might be a little bit rude and you're going to call their employer and get them fired if they're an accountant or a construction worker or a teacher or, you know, you name it, a janitor, a chef at a restaurant, a job. That's vile. That's evil that you would try to get somebody's livelihood taken away from them because something offended you on social media. Now, let's take somebody that's in that awesome job category, like a comedian or a rock star or a pro athlete, and they get accused of credible sexual misconduct, or they sued somebody to keep them from being successful for petty reasons, or they did some ultra racist, like selective casting for their movie, something like that, that actually hurts people. It's not just some offensive shit that was said on Twitter, but like something that actually has a real life victim. I don't think they're entitled to their awesome job. I don't feel any sympathy if you don't get to be a rock star anymore. Okay, get a fucking day job like the rest of us. You'll live. It's okay. And also, outside of that whole cancel culture debate thing, on a semi-unrelated but also related point, with other social issues. So like, my wife has a job, a real fucking job that she has to wake up in the morning and go to the office, and she's a big boss because she is an all-star, but she has to be an all-star to get where she's at. She had to be beyond deserving to get where she's at because she's a woman. And you might disagree with that, but I lived this life and I've seen firsthand how she over and over and over, she wasn't getting what she deserved. And she had to overachieve to finally get recognized. I've seen it firsthand. So I definitely see some, and maybe some of those differences are overblown, but you cannot deny that there are some differences between the way women are treated in corporate life and men are treated. And thankfully, my wife is so awesome that she was able to succeed despite that existing. Her success is not proof that men and women are treated equally. She succeeded despite that hardship. Okay? So I am fully willing to hear those arguments. Whereas if an actress says, well, I got paid $5 million to play pretend in this movie, and the dude got paid $8 million to play pretend in this movie, I don't give a fuck. You got paid $5 million to play pretend. Pay me $2 million and I'll fuck that guy on camera. I don't have any sympathy for you. You are in a different class than I am. There's janitors right now that don't give a fuck that somebody got paid $1 million more than your multiple $1 million salary. Don't give a fuck. So that's the way I view cancel culture. If you're a millionaire, super athlete getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to carry a ball, and you drunk drive, kill somebody, yeah, I don't give a fuck if you don't get to play football or basketball or whatever it is anymore. I don't feel any sympathy for you. By all means, cancel that guy. But the person that has a real job, don't call the cops. Don't call their employer. What the fuck is wrong with y'all? That's my philosophy on cancel culture. I think I've made all the points that I want to make about it. I don't want to be overly selective about it, because people will say, well, everybody listens to questionable bands. And then other people will say, no, you don't. Y'all listen to Pantera, don't you? I listen to Pantera. I'm not going to lie. There's several Pantera songs I like. Phil is unquestionably a questionable character in the metal community. I love Pantera, y'all. He's done some shit that's, boy, I don't know about that one, Phil. You shouldn't have done that. You're probably a bad person. But like I said, I draw a clear and distinct line, unquestionable, no full-on Nazis. If you are bold enough to put a fucking swastika on your album cover, you ain't even trying to be slick about it, you can fuck off. Again, like I said, that's probably all the points I want to make. I don't think that I'm going to end on this recording like I normally do and go, Jesus, I should have said this. I'm pretty sure I said everything I wanted to say. And if not, I'll make another episode, but I think we're good. Please tell me what you think. Do you think I'm being unreasonable? Because I feel very reasonable in my stance on this. Do you think I'm blowing this out of proportion? Do you think they're blowing it out of proportion? I really want to hear what you think to help me iterate on my opinion. Input is good. So with all that said, let's go to the riff of the week. As I said earlier, every weekend, YouTube exclusive, I break down my top 5 new metal album releases of the weekend. This weekend, one of the bands I picked was Misery Index. This album is incredible, y'all. You definitely need to check it out. The album is Complete Control, and the title track of the album is this week's riff of the week, Misery Index, Complete Control. Definitely check that out. Check out that video where I break down my top 5. Tell me what you think about cancel culture. If you're not on YouTube and there's no comment section, you can hit me up on social media, links in the description. Send me an email, HeavyMetalPhilosophy@gmail.com. But in the meantime, remember, read philosophy, listen to metal, and unless you're a Nazi, I love you.